Imagine a young boy growing up in the 1950s with the potential for greatness, surrounded by promise. But instead, he's plagued by an ever-deepening darkness hidden beneath a veil of normalcy. This boy, who would eventually become one of the most notorious serial killers in American history, was Ed Kemper. And his story begins long before he took the lives of his victims. It begins with his fractured childhood. Ed was born in 1948 in Burbank, California. The child of Clarnell and Edmund Kemper, his early life was anything but peaceful. His father, a World War II veteran, was emotionally distant and eventually left the family when Ed was just a boy. This abandonment, while painful, may not have been the root cause of Ed's descent into violence. No, that would come from something far darker, something much closer to home. Clarnell Kemper was a woman of unwavering control. She was harsh, domineering, and openly belittled Ed. In fact, she often made it clear that she despised her own son. A pattern emerged early in Ed's life, one that would be devastating and formative. Clarnell would call Ed all kinds of names, often telling him that he was ugly and unworthy. But worse still was the psychological cruelty, the emotional abuse that Ed suffered at her hands, which would shape the trajectory of his life forever. Ed's relationship with his mother was toxic. In fact, Clarnell's psychological abuse seemed to foster within Ed a deep, unresolved rage and resentment. It wasn't just that she hated him, it was how she made him feel insignificant. The emotional neglect, the constant denigration. This was where his hatred would fester, especially towards women. The very woman who was supposed to be his protector became his greatest tormentor. And Ed would later confess that his hatred towards women, particularly his mother, was one of the key psychological drivers behind his crimes. But it wasn't just Clarnell. Ed's family life was also marked by isolation. As a child, Ed was often left alone, isolated in his own thoughts. And it was during these formative years that Ed began to exhibit some of the warning signs of deeper psychological issues. As early as age 10, Ed began to fantasize about death. Not just death, but power over life. Ed Kemper's early life was filled with emotional scars and dark fantasies. His relationship with his mother, Clarnell, would set the stage for a future filled with violence and terror. But the darkness inside him didn't emerge overnight. It grew over time, in isolation and neglect. If you want to understand how this twisted journey unfolded, stay tuned for the next part, where we dive deeper into Ed's first steps toward becoming the co-ed killer. Don't forget to hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss the chilling details of Ed's descent into madness.